Now, the next thing is the 3 roundings. So I'm going to do this in reverse order because the hardest one is the spine must round. And the spine must round is also a statement of, they're just using the term yuan, but it's also part of what's called wrapping. If you want to talk about your hand, one of the big things that's in Xingyi is that you have your fingers. And Xingyi originally as a martial art came from the legend. I mean, it's a metaphor, probably, but there was a very famous general in China called Yue Fei. As a matter of fact, and he was around at the time, I actually know one of his relatives, that he was around at the time the Mongols are going to invade China. And the general thought for most people is that if the emperor got jealous, so he had him killed. He was afraid, and because he did that, the Mongols took over China. A lot of people think that Yue Fei would have stopped the Mongols in their tracks because he's the only general in every encounter he had with a Mongol just stopped them dead. So Yue Fei was like a super general. Okay, now a little bit of history, interesting talking story, as they say. We have our generals today, right? And how do generals usually lead? From the back. Now, they had a number of things in China. For example, 2 big armies. The generals were in charge of teaching their officer corps who taught the soldiers how to fight. Okay, so if you want to know how good this army's martial techniques were, you ultimately had to look toward the general. Because if it came to be that the top general was one of his underlings could fight him and kill him, very often they'd give that guy the generalship. Kind of like what you call, you know, extreme meritocracy. Now, part of what occurred with all of this is that the generals taught their people, but they taught them all their fighting techniques. Well, what Yue Fei did is he taught his officer corps Xingyi. And he taught the people who taught the men, the non-commissioned officers, he taught them Eagle Claw, which is another Chinese martial art. Eagle Claw people are known literally, when they really practice a lot, they can literally with their fingers tear off the bark of a tree, crush your throat, whatever. Well, there's a big thing in Xingyi. This is coming, I'm moving this to try and get 2 things at once about your fists. Is that, look at my hand right now. If I'm doing classic Xingyi, just watch it. Does that look like a normal way a hand closes into a fist? Usually it's this, isn't it? Look at my hand. Watch how much the tendons are stretching. So even though you're making a fist, the point is that you could rip the skin off of someone or rip out their vertebrae or tear out a nerve or whatever it happens to be. But let's just put it this way, you end up with a rather amazing grip. Okay? Part of doing this is that if your chi is going to go from your wrist, in order to accomplish this, it has to go to the palm. But if the chi from the bubbling well point does not go to these 2 fingers, from the tiger's mouth, does not go to these 2 fingers, it will not, I repeat, it will not go into the other ones. And there's other techniques about how it's done here and for this finger, but it won't spread out. So in order for your chi to go fully to your palms, it has to go through the tiger's mouth. There's also another thing you want to consider about your health. At the end of your 5 fingertips connect to all your major acupuncture meridians to all 5 of your internal organs. So there actually is a whole Qigong method that the only thing they do for the internal organs, they do it with the fingers and the toes. They just do this. Bring the energy in, release it out. And that's their whole practice. They don't do anything else. It's just a part of Xingyi. It's the technique in Xingyi. But for example, if you'll watch me here for a second, what you're going to do next, when you're going to change feet, look at my hands right now. You see this? It's not, you see that opening up? It's not going to open up. Those tendons are not going to open. The chi is not going to go to your hand if the tiger mouth is closed. Now, if we take in Xingyi and we take a fist, most people hold their fist like this. But look how a Xingyi person does a fist. Can you see this spiraling? See where my hand closed? Now to show you something which is rather interesting. Do you have any people here who've got like a super strong grip? Now watch. This is all I'm going to say. This is your tiger's mouth. When I make a fist, I want you to puncture. I want you to press through this. Okay. Okay.
Finger.
Yeah, you can grab it. I mean, grab it. You grab a rock, crush the damn rock. Is that pretty simple? Here, how about I do this to you?
Not yet.
There you go. That's it. Okay, so you got that? And I don't climb rocks. I don't do anything. I mean, I'm like, I'm a couch potato and goddamn proud of it. Okay? So, both of you, but I want both of you to do it.
Okay.
Okay, so, here you go.
Jesus.
Yeah, you can tell I'm using a lot of strain. Come on. What, you need Geritol? I mean, what is this? You got it? Okay, so what happened? Not much.
Not much.
Okay, fine. Well, in order for something like that, which is a big thing in Xing, I mean, they have a very kind of a different fist than most people, that this area has to become round. But the rounding, unlike a ko, which that would be a ko with your thumb, this thing has to go to the tiger's mouth, spreads to your thumb, spreads all the way around, and almost makes a circle around your hand. And if you do that, this muscle will come out. I should mention, there's a thing in Xingyi which you really don't get in most martial arts. And I'll just do this and, come on, you got a strong head. Bend your head so it's strong. All right, put you over here so they can see it.
Okay.
This way.
This way, all right.
Look. You do that here, you can crack someone's skull right open. Or you can, let's see, you can hurt him. Leave it at that. Correct me if I'm wrong, you were doing this. Did that feel like a rock?
It felt like iron. And I'm pretty rugged. I can chop through bricks. And
Yay!
I mean, it felt more than just a hand. I was amazed, to be honest with you.
Okay, so, and you'll notice something. You know the reason I was going like this? I wasn't tensing up, or I couldn't have been moving around like this. I'd have been, you know, just easy, relaxed. Okay, so fair enough. So I'm just making this point. So, do you got that? This eventually is necessary in all the other techniques of Xingyi so that you can actually make a fist. And they use it. But it's in the Pichuan, it's all part of the eagle claw side of it. The chest must round, that's called Han Xiong. And this is very simple. Your chest, look right now. See how my chest is rounding? Like an hourglass. An hourglass curves in two directions. It curves horizontally and it curves down. And the purpose is that your chi can drop through your chest into your lower dantian. How are we doing? Yes? Now the last one is a stinker. This one, I have to say, is even more emphasized in Bagua than it is in Xingyi. And the technique is called rounding the spine. Now, it actually has two meanings when it's classically done. The first one is what's called bao, or, come here, Isaac. Face this way, face them. So this is your spine, right? So from your spine, can you see how I'm rounding these muscles, yes or no? Until they come all the way to the front of your chest. The lower spine goes from here all the way, the tissues to the front of your chest. So if you look at me, if I do it, I'll make it very obvious. You see, maybe you'll be able to see this. See this rounding, this wrapping? You could say it's a round, but it's actually a wrap. Then you also have a second part of this, which is not that easy to do. And this actually, rounding and koing, it's kind of in the middle. But let's look at my fingers right now. The basic action of a ko, if you remember, I said it's to hook your finger. Remember this? What about if you do that with your spine? But I want you to get something, because this is where it goes in Xingyi. In the beginning, you just want to get this part, not the second. Because your spine has to develop, otherwise it may be too much strain. Some people have, they have bad backs, and they have weak backs, and they have hidden weaknesses they don't know about, and you have to go through it stage by stage unless you want to play with fire. And I really don't recommend you do it. Speaking as a person who had their back broken once, I really recommend you don't do it. Now watch. Look at my fingers. Can you see a curve? Yes or no? And then there's going to be the lifting. There's going to be the slight curving. You see this here? So it's first come here and then bugger off. Okay? So it's both of them. It's this rounding in two directions. Can you see what I'm doing with my hand? I'm trying to make it really obvious. So what does that mean with your spine? That means if you can look, if we take it from C7, not so much the neck, because the neck is a slightly different animal. Can you all see how the bottom of my pelvis is tucking forward? And the other part, can you see the way my spine is kind of bowing out? Yes or no? And then it straightens. It bows. It straightens. But the first meaning of where they're talking, just by the way they put it in the other ones, because I said Yu Ting didn't necessarily put everything in it, is that there is the sense that your C7, your tailbone, are kind of like hooking together and joining in a point in the middle. For a few minutes, do we have any questions? And if it is, that'll, you know. Yes? Okay, look at my feet right now. Now, two issues. The ideal distance between your feet, see my feet right now, is no wider than that. Now that's the ideal. Now, people sometimes get wider, and why do they get wider? Well, you're bow-legged. Not much you can do about that. But you know what's much more common as people start aging? Or if you've had some kind of accidents or something, is that your thigh bone and your hip socket don't fit together quite well? Or why do people want to have their feet wider? Because they have lower back problems, and when you're close like this, it causes a lot of pressure on your lower back. Now, as in everything has got a good and a bad side. The good side is that if you put the pressure, you'll make it a lot stronger. The bad side is that if it's too much pressure and you have a weakness, it'll make it dramatically worse. So, the generalized thing is that as close as you can get, like if one foot's on the floor, the other one is almost, if you were just to take your knee and bring it back, you'd be within an inch of your back heel. Now, in the martial art of Xingyi, the reason for this is that this is part of the reason why they can advance so quickly. Okay? If you put your legs really wide, you know, it takes time to get it. If it's like this, it's as fast as you can go. And Xingyi is known for covering ground. I mean, they literally will run somebody down. Okay, so it's just the way that that thing works. Now, the other reason is this. If you take your left, right, and central channels, when your feet start going really wide, you don't work the left and the right channels. You work the etheric body out here. Can you hear me? But if it gets into about, this is about as wide as you want to get to where the center, if you cut your foot in half, it would be where your shoulders nest to your quads. That's the widest you want to get, because that will enable the flow up and down the left and right and central channels of your body to naturally go for maximum. If you make it a little bit closer, it's really not a problem. Okay? But I'm saying that's the maximum wideness. It actually gets narrower. The actual flow of the chi up and down the body becomes stronger. So that's the reason why all that stuff is done. And that is actionable information. As in information you will act on, not just know that it exists. The internet's good for that. Anything's on it. Truth, lies, doesn't matter. It's a lot of information. Yes? Well, the method of Xingyi does not in the beginning use dissolving. It simply goes for getting your mind to feel your nervous system and just letting it open up. Okay? And the phrase that's used is that if you have a hand around your throat, just Relax your hands. And that's the way your mind grabs your nervous system. Now, dissolving goes a lot farther because dissolving can take you to where, when you reach the absolute epitome, as much as you can do with that, you flat line, dissolving can take you way past that. Because you can go into things that are so deep inside you that it's not really, your conscious mind can't touch them. Because you're dealing with the depth of the unconscious. But at the beginning, the biggest thing they do in Xingyi is they just say to open your nerves. The other phrase they have is open your blood vessels. And then later on they talk about opening your pores. Opening the pores of your skin. The only way you can do either of those three actions is literally you have to take the stranglehold on your nervous system and let it simply just open up some more, more juice, more power can run through it. Okay? So that's how the method is done. And the breathing, which we'll get to tomorrow, becomes very important because the way in which when you hold and the way in which you breathe is very important to achieving that goal. Yes, ma'am. Well, wait till tomorrow when we deal with, and you just have at least the basics, how to move, and I start showing you, I can tell you. But when you're talking about just holding the posture, all of them, all the time. When you move, in general, it's still all of them all the time, but you have the action of closing and the action of opening. So it's one thing when all these things that you're opening up are, like, for example, let's take, for example, your head. So when you're pushing your tongue on the roof of your mouth, on the hard palate, and that's opening up the plates of your skull and your brain, you do that when you open, but when you close and you still keep your tongue there, you're actually bringing the energy into your brain. So you have to consider whether this energy chi is moving into you or out of you, and that actually is where the answer to your question lies. And for that, we have to start looking at the different pieces of the movement. You can't make a generalized statement. But the first stage, when you're just standing, is that yes, there is where it's done where you practice opening and closing, but the first stage is not to practice opening and closing. It is very specifically just to try and get all of it to opened. Now there is, for example, an equivalent phrase in the Tai Chi classics which actually describes what the process is. It says, first you open before you close. If a system is too intrinsically contracted, you have, to the degree to which you can open it up, okay, let's say if you wanted to contract, you want to pull everything in, Anita, just as a thing. Let's say that's the possibility of how much you could open. You stop here. But if you make the top line here go higher, that also enables you on the other side to go lower. It stretches the whole system. So, as I said, it really depends. But the first phase is just everything has to open up. That's it. No, that's okay, but okay, let's try and get this. Okay, I'll just make this very simple. If you're holding, right? So you're going to run into a question, which I'm going to have them show you this, but you reach to a point where you can't open and close, your body shuts down. It's almost as like, metaphorically, you've run so many miles and then you hit the wall, right? What you do in Xingyi is you don't stop and go, I hit the wall, hell with it. You don't do that. What you do is, you hit the wall and your energy can't. Now, you get your system, in other words, you take the chi that's become stagnant and you stir it. You get it alive again, then you do this again. During that phase, right, the first thing is that if you get tired, you don't open and close. You've done Santi. You just, oh, okay. Now, in the second phase, you don't want to do that. You kind of at least have some opening, right? You don't want to do that. Then, in the second phase, because if you don't stand for a long enough period of time in a stance, then you don't really get it doing what it can do. So at that point, David, then you would start opening and closing until you finally feel that, you know, you really hit the wall again. Okay, then you're going to move. But the difference is that in the first one, you might only be able to stand for a minute. Okay? Boom, and then you move. But then again, later on, when you do the opening and closings, you might be able to stand for 15 minutes before you have to do it. But you have to get that first initial stage, because if you're trying to open and close, but this is how your nervous system is, you can't. Do you understand? You really can't. So the first thing is you at least have to get your system to open up enough to where your mind and your body no longer objects to opening up. Does that answer your question? I don't know if that also helped you, Anita, but I hope so. Okay, cool. All right, with that being said and done, Isaac's just going to take you for half an hour, 40 minutes, whatever, and just show you, and just show you how to do the basic thing of how you bring your hands back and you switch stances. So as I said, you know, you might want to switch stances because your legs hurt. You might want to do it simply because your body is no longer opening up. And at that point, there's no profit. I mean, it would be like, we have one young man here, he says he's a rock climber. Now, I've never climbed rocks. I've walked up mountains, done that in Himalayas, but let's put it this way, I've never climbed rocks for fun. I had to do it in the Himalayas a few times if I didn't want to die. Because you get in some places, you got one choice, go up or, you know, just give it up, as they say. But you hit a wall. If you were going up, and you're going up a wall, right? And all of a sudden, that face, all of a sudden, another mountain decides to jump out, because this is an anime cartoon, and go up like 3 miles. You know what that tells you? Don't keep going up that wall. I mean, go down, go sideways, but get off of it, because there is no way you're going to climb that rock up 3 miles. So you hit a point just to where your nerves, the ability of your mind to open, the ability of doing all these things to happen. Can you follow me? Where it says, wait a minute here, you know, I'm coming to the end. That's okay. Then you do it and you change over, because it's a bit like the process could be described like tanning leather. Do you know how leather's tanned? You have a cowhide. It's stiff and it's hard. It's almost like you hit someone on the head with it and you probably knock them out. You just keep on bending it and folding it and bending it, and you keep on doing it until it gets soft. You have to work it. Okay? Just like a big lump of dough, you have to like work it till you can finally, you know, make it out in whatever you're going to use it, pies, cakes, bread, whatever it happens to be. So the point is that you don't try and push through the resistance. You do it till, okay, that's it. Now I do it from a different. I do another one. I do another one. Each time it's like you're bending it, you're folding it, you're bending it, you're folding it. And every time you're doing it, it's progressively getting softer and softer and softer until it becomes smooth. When it becomes smooth, aha, now you can say, okay, that's fair enough. At least my body doesn't object to my nerves opening up. Now I can start playing around with opening and closings. Okay? How are we doing? Okay, this is the story of this. Santi is specifically the standing posture that the martial art of Xing Yi focused on. Now, Xing Yi, beside that, has also got this series of postures that go like this that you could hold, but Santi is really the big one. Now, what is the root of all of this? The standing posture that I show, for example, in opening the energy gates of your body, okay, that is the first of 200 standing postures. Those standing postures originally came out of Taoist Qigong, and through those 200 postures, you can open up every channel that's in the body, and some of them are just based on doing very specific things. The one that you do just with your hands by your side, in terms of dissolving, is the best one to begin with because it's utterly neutral. It's utterly neutral. It's the easiest of all of them. It is, I think there's no doubt, it is easier to stand with your hands by your side than to keep your arms up in the air in any fashion, shape, manner, or form. But it's also the fact that it's neutral. It doesn't, you know, it doesn't do It doesn't emphasize any one thing, and its particular strong point is that it's the easiest one just to enable the downward dissolving thing to happen. Because as soon as you pick your arms up in the air, the sheer act of picking your arms up in the air also causes the tendency to take some of the rising energy into account. Whereas if your hands are just flat by your side, you simply take that right off the table. So it's an easier point of focus. So because it's the most neutral, that is the standard thing in all things come out through Taoism. For example, Tai Chi starts that way. I mean, it's done different ways. The way, for example, I show and open the energy gates of your body with your feet on your left and your right channels, that is the most neutral of all the standing postures. If you put your feet in other positions closer, it actually is slightly less neutral. But that's because when you start moving past the most neutral one, I said there's some purpose or some function behind it, or it's linking into a much larger system. It's interlinked to, it's a backup to, a whole lot of other things downstream. Okay? Fair enough. But in my opinion, if you would talk about for most human beings, I am a super great fan of Santi in terms of it is very direct and it works the body harder than the postures, for example, I've done each round, or most of these other standing postures, with the exception of your hands being in back of you. And the way in which it's done, it just brings out the yang energy of the body in the fastest way that I know anything does. Not just fast, but deep. Now, it's harder to do. The phrase goes, you get what you pay for. There's no free lunch and all that. Nothing is for free. I know in the internet age, you give free stuff. Yeah, right. I give you 2 cents for free, and I make sure I get $5 from you on the other end. But if you're talking about for real truth, you have to put the effort into it. But in terms of a payoff, it's just incredibly simple, incredibly clear. It has no ambiguity, and I just personally think it's a piece of magic. I should mention that I practiced that for years. So, and I was, my own personal experience is that the original person who brought Xingyi out, his teachers made him do just Santi and Pitren for 2.5 years before they taught him the rest of the Xingyi system. And it's because it just builds such a powerful foundation. And I would have to say that running around the United States, and for that matter, even a lot of the schools you see in China now, they don't really understand Santi that well. Because the phrase old school, the way it was done, it's strict, it's real, but like it's no nonsense, it does what it does. Well, I learned it from people who did it old school. And just sticking your arms up in the air in something that approximates the posture won't do what Santi does. You actually have to have the precision in it. It's a finally, just in terms of human bioengineering, it's an incredible thing. That's all I have to say. Now, next. All right, well, if we have that, let's look about moving. Now, I want to, again, make this fundamental point. In terms of what Santi is really going to give out of you, then I would say that it's really, and that's why I want to get back to this stuff as soon as we can, it's the actual holding of the posture that really does it. But in order that your chi doesn't get stagnant, in which you don't push your system, in order that you don't hurt yourself, and again, I'll go back, that your chi doesn't become stagnant. Because if you stand too long and, your legs hurt too much, you start shaking and your system can't hold it, that's a symptom that your chi's really become stagnant. Exactly when that happens that's a bit like cooking. Exactly when do you throw the pepper or this spice in? I mean, that's an art that is ever evolving, just as good cooking is evolving with every cook. But the general thing is that Santi classically, a posture, like when I was learning, until I could hold Santi for 1 hour on each end, Wang Xujing, my first teacher, he said, I won't take you seriously until you can do that. That's a quote. And then I came in and, I did it, and then he went, oh, okay. All right, must not be kidding. Oh, shit, I got to teach this kid, all right. It was something like that. I mean, but this was the old days. Where in the old days, if you didn't actually hold it or do it, they'd hit you with a stick or they'd just throw you out. Or the classic thing is that, well, it makes your stomach strong, so Oh, not practicing a lot, huh? Stomach has to be strong to blow. Boom, and they drop you in half. Going, see, gotta stand more. It really, you know. Next time I might decide to hit you hard. No, but this is old school. You understand when you're talking about, you know, when martial arts were done, where it was a life and death game as opposed to a sports I won, you lost. Believe me, the standards get very unforgiving. Because the teacher is going to, they may appear, what I said may appear to be cruel, but they're very kind to you because bear in mind, when you get into a real situation, that means you're maimed or dead. So, you know, you have to take a little bit up front to kind of, you know, kind of toughen you up a bit, as it were. But the point here is that when that stagnancy starts to happen, then you need to change the posture. Can you all follow me? Now, there are two ways you can change the posture. I will show you the simplified, and then we'll take you through the movement a bit, which is better. Okay? The simplified way is terribly simple. If you're like this, you just come in like so, and now you just do it on the other side. But I will tell you something, that's got a problem attached to it. That's okay once you really can move your chi to do that. But in the beginning, you need to have something that if you're standing and it gets to be too much, you just need to do something to really get your body moving. Otherwise, again, you don't break the stagnancy pattern. Can you follow me? You just need to, like, you know, I guess, right? This I'm going to have to take. I'll go back to my grandfather. He told me this once, and I looked at him because I didn't know what to say. He was a really good cook. He was actually restaurants, all that kind of stuff, right? And he used to say that there's certain kind of foods, right, like with soups, and he says, well, you know, when you first start off and you don't quite know what you just keep on stirring it and you hope for the best, something's going to happen. But then he says the best cook, they know just at what speed to stir it once, and that's all they do. They mix it just right. Now, clearly there's a big difference between just, well, I'm going to keep on stirring this pot and hope that, you know, it doesn't burn, to I'm going to stir it just right and mix all the flavors in it. Kind of two very different arts of the game. So the point is that I think that in the beginning, the moving from one posture to the other is the equivalent. Just keep on stirring and hope you don't burn the pan. And then later on, when you really have that, well, then there's only really a need to just change this for the stagnancy. But that's the one stir method. And that's a wee bit harder. So I'm going to just go with the movement. Okay, for those of you who know Santi, it's very obvious what I just did. What did I do? I just did the whole movement, but I just took one foot and put it like that. That's all I did. When you first do this, there's another principle of holding, okay? And one of the principles of holding is that your mind holds your lower dantian. Now, they have two phrases in Qigong that are important to separate in Xingyi and Bagwan, any Taoist thing. One is Qi Chen Dandian and Yi Zai Dandian. So one is that your Qi sinks to your lower dantian, and the other one is that your mind holds your lower dantian. Yi, your intention is in your lower dantian. So kind of think of it like, you know, here. Blub, 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 blub. She sinks to your lower dantian. The other one is that's your lower dantian. Your mind holds. While you're looking, while you're doing, while you're aware of everything, some part of your mind. I don't know if it's 1%, I don't know if it's 50%, this is not exactly a numbers game. That a part of your mind just holds your lower dantian, just like I'm holding this bottle of water. And it stays stable, and that part of my mind never leaves there, so that every action I'm doing in Xingyi is gradually, and it's the whole thing of Santi, is to gradually start filling the dantian with qi. And gradually getting the qi from the lower dantian to fully connect to the feet. You can't get the qi to your lower dantian if it doesn't sink from above, okay? But you can get your qi to your lower dantian, but you may not be able to get it down to your feet. So these are kind of like the two big parts of the game. Now, if you look at the footwork, you don't have to get this. If you're doing it for your health and whatnot, you don't have to get it exactly. And in a few minutes when you're all doing that, I'll take some of the guys from martial arts and I'll describe it, like how you do it if you're looking to use it for martial arts. Because then the precision matters, because bear in mind that in martial arts, you're fighting another human being. You're not just fighting yourself. See, in your own mind, you can be 12 feet tall and you can be winning the NFL or the basketball, the NBA, or you can be jumping up 300 feet in the air and kicking the top of a tree off. The only trouble is if you try and do it against another human being, like, it's a problem. Because as the joke goes, they hit back, they move back, they don't necessarily cooperate with you in your own mind. You can be a legend, but when you want to be a legend with other people, well, the other people can object, and then it's harder to do it. It's that simple. Now watch. The first is, if you take, remember how I said all that stuff about getting your chi in your foot? Well, this is the bubbling well point is on the ball of your foot. Okay? It's the whole of your foot. What you want to do is that you want to shift your weight backwards, and you want to have the sense of the energy from the ball of your foot coming right up your leg into your lower dantian. Okay? Yes? The next thing is that you're going to step forward, and as you step forward, you're going to want your chi to go from your lower dantian back down to the bubbling well point in your foot. And the way you're going to step, you turn first 45 this way, and you go like this with your foot. Can you all see me? It's a 45-degree angle. Okay, watch again. Here, in, out. Now next, you're going to bring your feet parallel, parallel to the ground. And we're only going to get this far, because the next part is going to be tricky for some of you, because many of you have never done a half step. And that's going to take a little bit of coordination. So let's just look at the first 3 parts of this. Okay, part number 1. Bubbling well point to lower dantian. Point number 2, dantian. Heel, you see this here? Heel, boom. 2, 3. Let's do that for a few minutes. Okay, so here. So what we're looking at now, if you just a bit away, is that the hand motion that's going to go with this is going to be this. And what this thing is about is that in any one of, obviously, here, if my hand was like this, right? If my hand was like this, this can be a pull, to pull somebody in. And if I pull him in, let's say, if you look at here, if I had his hand, because it doesn't really much matter where you are, if I was like this and I come across and he goes to hit me, and I go like this, can you see what that's doing to him? But bear in mind, the next thing is going to happen is this motion is going to be, you're going to come out. So what is that? That's where I go, boom. Do you understand? So I pull him, and this whole thing where this goes is a Xingyi and a Tai Chi technique where you go and you actually use to snap their neck. Use it in Tai Chi too. But the other part is, even if you don't snap his neck, get this circle. So he's flying toward me, and as soon as I get him where he's going like this, I step right in and hit him. Yes? It's used all the time. And it's also very common, for example, if Dice just takes a punch, it's very commonly used that way. Look what happens. It's used this way a lot. What has this just done to him?
Clamp.
He's clamped, but again, just watch, because it's going to be very fast. I mean, you're back at him almost, if we would take it, if he's like this, he gets to here and he's still going to go to here. Between the time he goes to here and he goes to here, you're hitting him at the same time. Head-on car collision. That's what it's about. Okay, so now the hand motions are purely about reinforcing what you've done before, because this, see this what I'm doing with my hands? Well, what this is doing is I'm pulling the energy from my feet to my lower dantian, from my hands to lower my dantian, and my dantian at the same time is going, and that's what just gives you this ability to completely take his weight off out of him. So again, look, it's that, it doesn't matter. Just, if I just were to hold him, just the sheer fact of bringing my feet like this will do that to him. Okay? But if I do that and I bring my hands in, see what that's doing? And if you add the two of them together, you get this really big thing now. It's also the same thing that, for example, if he just kicks, this type of thing is done. You know, just kick Isaac. I want to. There you go. Boom, boom. Look what's happening. See this action here? If he kicks, and you come back at him. So he's falling forward. You're coming and you're going into him. But see, you're not running away from him. It's not like you're trying to get away from his kick. You're not. As a matter of fact, you're just standing here, and now you're just doing it. You're going back to pull him forward. You're not going back to run away from the guy. As a matter of fact, the way this type of stuff is standardly done, you can also go right into him. Xingyi doesn't run away from anything. Doesn't do that. It's not a strategy. Tai Chi will do that. Bagua will do that. Xingyi doesn't do that. So do you understand? Now, the next thing about this is that there's also that if I do this and he does this, and I go like so, if he's standing, this motion here of stepping this way implies breaking his leg. That's one. Do you understand? You know what those are?
Yeah, oh yeah.
So it implies that. And I mean, some Xingyi people will they'll even go and bring their feet way up before they come out, but you don't really need to do that. The second thing that it implies is that when you go here, watch, see my foot go here? See on the back of his knee? That breaks a leg. Okay? Number two, even if you don't want to break his leg, if you have your foot back here, that action, that breaks the leg. You all see that? I mean, I'm doing it gentle. That breaks the leg. There's no maybes about it. But even if you don't do that, it's the sheer fact that if you step your foot over here, that action, boom, you use your knee to hit his leg. Also, for example, if you were to kick with this leg, yeah, and I'm here, well, you see, if he kicks with this one, okay, just go ahead. I'm not going to hurt you. With that leg, it's okay. You just go right for the leg he's standing on. Okay? And the higher up they kick, the worse they are because the more the leg's exposed. How we doing? Yes or no? Now, obviously, if you can remember when you did P-Tren to begin with, when you did Shan Ti to begin with. Remember this? Yes or no?
Yes.
Same animal. Watch. This was still look. Okay, you got this, but watch what happens next. Looks familiar? Look familiar? Look familiar? And I'll go to a little bit about this business, what's here. Then when you come back and you go here and you step, this hand out here and your foot going this way. This is used a lot in Xingyi. If your hand is out in the attack, just in this moving, it gets you so you can have your hand in front that protects your center line, but then you're moving on it. So it just creates, like if you just take a shot, it just creates this barrier they can't get past, and you walk in. Now, a lot of people, when they go, they hit, they kind of freeze, and they try and hit. No, this thing is that you go to here, and there's no hesitation. But this, if your hand is still extending, this, you just move in on them. It causes your body not to freeze. So you don't get this, if I contact something, I kind of stop for a second. You just keep on moving. Okay, so does that make sense to you all?
Yeah.
Anyway, so now go back and just do the footwork. The next step is either called by Xingyi people talk about it worm walking. Okay, and it's generally in Chinese martial arts called a half step. How does a worm walk? Most animals go like this, right? The way a worm walks, it's almost to make a joke. I think it's called kerfumping, or there's a Monty Python, a really cute thing on it. Okay, but okay, what it is this: a worm walks this way. It goes a little bit. It goes a little bit. And it comes in. It doesn't walk with one step and then walk with the other and work with the other. That's why it's called worm walking, or just a half step. So that's what you're going to need to practice for minutes, because this is the one that usually gets most people. When you have gone to here and you bring your feet together, right? Watch. First, the waist turning is going to get your foot out. Watch. Remember we did this with a hand? Now you're going to do it with your foot. How are we doing? I mean, you can go as far as you want. I mean, if you want, you can really go out far. But you don't need to. All that's necessary is the fact that from here, you turn your hips and that puts your foot out. Now watch. Weight shifts, foot goes down to pull you forward. Pull you forward, you understand? It goes to pull you forward. As it pulls you forward, your back foot goes off the ground and then you settle on it. And then you settle on it. Now the trick of this, if you'll notice, if I start with a stance that is of a certain size, whatever, I got, you know. Yes? Watch something. What are you noticing about my stance? It comes back the same. What does it not do? Okay? It doesn't sometimes go like this and sometimes go like this. You end up with a stance the exact same length. So what that means is, however far your front foot goes, your back foot comes underneath you. It literally comes underneath your butt. So let's just try walking like that for a few minutes, okay? Now, one of the critical issues and what Xingyi does all the time boxing does this, Western boxing, karate doesn't. Here, this is the standard thing, for example, in karate, a lot of martial arts. What they do is, come here, Isaac, if you're at it, let's see, you have a hand out, right? If I'm here, right, I take my back leg and I step forward, shifting my weight. Can you all see that? That's pretty common. Xingyi, in general, doesn't do that. It doesn't do that. What it does is this. If I'm here, watch. Now, I can't touch Isaac, can I? I'm too far away from him, yes? It really closes a gap, but it does something else. Can you all see how it's used for closing it? So if I touch his hand way out here, right, he's safe, yes? I don't know about that. Maybe, maybe not. Do you understand? So it's meant so that wherever you contact something, even if it's at a distance, right, it means that the next thing that happens is you're right on top of them. And that's why they have all these things in Xingyi where they don't grab your hand, they do something to nail your foot to the ground so you can't move. Because what happens, as an example in boxing, if I'm here and you go to do, and I step back, you can't hit me if I jump back. So Xingyi is always doing something. Once they get that hand, they don't allow you to jump back. They don't give you the space. And the phrase they use in Xingyi is the phrase is actually literally, they talk about planting a tree or nailing somebody's foot to the ground. Okay? Just, they can't go anywhere. Bump, bump, bump. Thank you. Here I come. Now, but the point here is that, watch, look how even this is. Now, if he does something else again, I can just move an inch, and still, that's still a half step. Don't worry, I'm not hitting him, I'm just touching him. That's still a half step. The only difference is that my half step now became how big? So this allows you either to go, if I'm way back here, I see a gap, take a big step, take another big step, or it allows me, if I'm in really close, to just take a step that's very small, that tactically works. So you could increase your distance by an inch or by a foot or by 2 feet, depending upon what's happening, what the need of the moment. Okay, so you have this. So in Zhuanquan, for example, where it's very common with this, is just watch. Okay, now, at this moment, I stopped here. I didn't bring my foot in. But now if Isaac, in this position, look, I just bring it in that little bit. That's where you actually hit him. And by having the weight going in like this, your entire body weight's behind your hand. Okay? And you can do it in very, very tiny points in space, which is what the main point is, because that's actually where combat takes place, in very tiny points in space. I mean, all this kind of stuff of, well, okay, and you know, person goes and they step back a foot and they go, oh, that was nice. This is what happens. Things happen damn fast in fighting. So the faster you can maneuver, the better. So now if we look at the next one, where there's now a whole nother series of half steps. We then, for example, so I'm still going to stay on drawn trend. So let's say I'm just here and you want to attack me. Now that's one. He blocked it. That's cool. But now watch something. Now we go for something else. And that's bung train. Because part of the whole thing of using half steps is that if you're stuck here, you just can take a short step and you don't get stuck. And you're not, no, I'm only touching you, I say. And you're not slugging it out toe to toe. Shingi actually generally does not slug it out toe to toe. Even if it does that, its toe to toe is going to be like this. It's going to be like this inexorable train that's moving at you. It just keeps going forward, it doesn't go back. Okay, so, fair enough. So is that helpful? So, okay, so you can play around with that if you like. But one more point I want to make here, this thing here, that when you touch, look, here's your elbow. Now, I mean, this is one thing. Do that for a kick, do it for a foot, do it for any if he attacks me. I mean, that's a pretty easy thing to get a nice little angle at, you know. I mean, from here, I could go here. If he goes to block it, boom, I just go up with the other hand, easy enough. Because there's no bouncing back. You just go from wherever you are. But what you also have is this. You have this issue when your hand touches. Watch what my hand's doing. You see how I'm pressing him down? Likewise, my hand could turn him this way. Likewise, my hand could turn this way. In this sense, it's no different than Bagua. It's quite simple. It's that this point of touching now just gives me the angle I want. Okay, this is the standing people, they put standard retort from Shingi is they put their hand clamp and then just come over and hit you. Okay, so go and try that for a bit and we'll get to the next fist in a bit. The waist activates the foot to move, or the foot activates the waist to move. So we have both of this in this Pitrin thing, in this Antin. Let's see, Isaac, come back and put your hands on my hips. I think if someone's just holding me, I just think you'll get the visual contrast. No, since you're probably going to start in your left foot, do it this way. Okay, watch. Look at this here. You see my waist moving? Yes or no? Yes. Watch what happens. Do you see my waist move my foot? Where have you seen this before? Your waist moved your hand, didn't it? No difference. No, but now we have point number 2. So that's the first, come back. That's the first half, right? The first half is your waist moves your foot. The second one is watch. I sink down. See my leg bending? See my front leg bending is actually pulling my waist forward. Pulling it and see how the foot is pulling, the waist is loose, but it is the foot that's causing the waist to move. If the waist is let loose, that's what happens. And then at the very end, okay, come back here again. Then your foot comes up and it moves the waist again. So your waist moves your foot moves your waist, and then your waist moves your foot at the end. So it's this constant thing. If you just watch my hips and my leg, and don't worry about what my hands are doing, because you're going to put that together in 2 seconds. And you will see there is always this part that's moving the waist. Yes? But then in the beginning, it is clearly the waist that's moving the foot. And then at the very end, when you come down, the foot and the waist they kind of just gel together, where it's like a one-piece deal. Try it again, please.